What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's video. Tube Amp, Meet Your Challenger by Mike Cole. So what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be reacting to Tube Amp, Meet Your Challenger by Mike Cole. If you haven't already, please go and give Mike a sub and go to the link that I've included in the description of the video for the original video. Give the original video a like, and on this video, my video, leave a comment on what you'd like to see me react to next, and let's get to it.
So the other day, I actually got my hands on the Boss ME90 for the first time, and I was really excited to make a video about it and show off the tones and really see what it could do. And with it being a more traditional style of multi-effects pedal, I thought it would be a really cool opportunity to throw out my Helix, to throw out my Quad Cortex for the first time in a while, and really see what would happen if I plugged this thing into an actual amp to see the full capabilities. Now, with it being a Boss multi-effects pedal, I felt it appropriate to try and use it with my Katana that I hadn't actually played in a couple of months. So I took this guy out, I mic'd it up, and I went to work. So I plugged in my guitar, I pressed the record button in Logic, and we got going. And within a couple of minutes of playing these first few chords, I could instantly tell that I actually really liked a lot of the tones that were coming out of the ME90, which really surprised me because previously upon getting it, I thought there was no way that I was ever going to really like this thing. But even more than just figuring out that I liked the ME90, what really stood out to me about that whole experience was finding out how much I really liked the tones that were coming out of the Katana. I thought maybe I've just learned to better mic up amps in the past couple months because I was sitting there playing like, oh, this sounds good. I mean, like I said before, I'd been using the Helix and the Quad Cortex so much for live gigs, and I would come back in here and I wanted to mic up an amp. Usually I would go to the Tone King. So I'd forgotten for a moment just how far solid state amps had come in the last 5 to 10 years. I think I realized that I was and I am willing to say that in terms of amps, that might actually be the magnum opus for Boss. I mean, I don't really think they can push the envelope any farther. Wait.
So yeah, this is kind of interesting. This is something that I myself haven't really looked into, and there's been nothing on my channel about this, the modeling amps, like the Katana. So I'm actually kind of curious, and much like he said, you know, the solid state technology has come light years. I don't know, I'm used to using modeler pedals and plugins of modelers. An actual modeler amp, I really don't know. I really haven't had an opportunity to play with one. And from what I hear, everyone is raving about the Katana. If you are going to get one, Katana's a pretty good place to start.
Wait, hold on just a second. Wait, what do you mean there's a new one? No, I just told them that this was the magnum opus. Wait, okay, you may be called boss, but you are not the boss of me. Okay, I'm really sorry, guys. I'm really sorry, but apparently there's like a new one? From what I'm hearing, there might be a few. So a little bit over 4 years ago, the guitar world was introduced to the Katana Mark II. Now, I wasn't really on the Katana bandwagon until a little bit over a year ago when I got my first ever Katana off of a Facebook Marketplace deal. But now it seems the time that Boss has decided to introduce us to, well, the third generation of Katana. Now, here's the thing. What does this even all mean? And here's the thing. I'm just as curious as you are, genuinely, because a lot of the time with digital units, I forget that hardware updates are going to come because of just how effortless it's actually become to just update the software. So when
and it's like that about multi-effects units and modeler pedals all the time. I always say this. It's awesome. It's the hardware, but whenever there's a new firmware update, that basically means you get a whole bunch of new effects, a whole bunch of new amp sims, whole bunch of new IRs, whatever. You know, yeah, that is kind of awesome because that's the way this technology seems to be going. I'm looking at all the modelers, and especially something like the Tone X1 that I just checked out in a video not too long ago with Ola England. It's basically just a blank hard drive, and you just keep on uploading things to it. Now, the Katana isn't quite that, but yeah, just like any other sort of product that's digital like this, yeah, as soon as there's updates, there's a whole bunch of new effects and everything. Because it makes sense. As opposed to redesigning all the hardware. If the hardware is good and you want to keep on selling the same hardware, just keep updating the software and firmware as another way to entice more people to, okay, now you really want to buy one of these because we got these packs. Now you really want to buy this because we got these overdrives built into it. Now you really want to buy this because we've had a deal with this, amp modeler company, and so on and so forth. It makes for a better business model.
Something like this actually does come out, you start to really wonder and think to yourself, what could they actually do that's different from what they had before? And that's where things start to get really interesting, because on a baseline level, we're starting out with everything we've seen on the Katana beforehand. All of the basics, the tone settings, the effect library, the general layout. But then we start to really get into the new stuff, and that feels like where Boss seems to be making their big claims about these things. Okay, so let's mic this thing up and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Like, I'm generally starting to wonder, will some of these things be the big deal for some people? You see, the first big difference that I really began to notice was actually in the layout. Now that I've used the ME90 and a couple different Katanas, I realized that the Boss layout, specifically when it comes to amps, is pretty standard. They tend to always have some sort of variation of acoustic, clean, crunch, lead, and brown amps. Now, for my own personal use, since I've never been a metal guy or anything in that hard distortion realm, I usually end up sticking somewhere between like the clean, and I may, if I really need to, go up to the crunch. But nothing really past that. That's where this gets really interesting, because right here between clean and crunch, they've added an entirely new amp, and apparently it's called push. Now, to me, this is definitely the biggest difference, the biggest claim in Gen 3. I mean, having an entirely different amp there, and then unabashedly probably trying to model it after like the Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Mayer thing, and having the push clean tone.
Sounds pretty good to me. Still wondering what it's loaded with. 12-inch speakers or 10s? And if so, what? What kind of 12s? What kind of 10s? That makes a difference too. And I'm guessing there's some sort of USB out or some sort of IR. I don't know if you need a reactive. Well, it's solid state amp, so you might not need a reactive load. But I know very little about modeling amps and solid state amps. Very little, which is very obvious from what I'm just saying now. But I'm sure there's going to be some sort of way that you can go, maybe even just via USB out of the back of it into your computer to record that way as well too. But yeah, I'm wondering what kind of speakers are in front of it as well too. And if so, that it's got some sort of preamp out that also has an IR loader in there so that you can go to front of house too. It's probably got some sort of features like that, I'm assuming. Again, I don't know. That's a great part of these reaction videos too, is I'm learning the same time that all of you are.
Now, where it gets interesting to me is actually in what they added in Mark II, which is the variation button, which means now not only do you get the push clean, but you also get the push and another variation of that, which is 2 new amps instead of 1.
Well, he's got it mic'd up, so he's not using any sort of direct out or line out.
But the push amp is just one of the new things that I found. The interesting thing is that with a lot of the new features, they're different depending on the amp. And that's where I genuinely want to figure out where Boss is trying to go. Because depending on which of the new ones that you actually choose, you're probably in for just a slightly different experience. So let me actually explain. So what I learned is if we're strictly speaking about the baseline models before getting into any of the things with the Artist series, they're pretty much the same exact things with a couple of variations depending on whether you choose the 50 or the 100 watt. Essentially with the 100 watt, you're getting the cab resonance, the presence, and the contour on the EQ, which if we're still defining this as a practice amp, which I don't even know if we're doing that, and we'll get more into in a second, I don't think would make much of a difference for someone first getting into the world of katanas, like if they're using it as a beginner entry level amp. But for someone who's more experienced or more of a fan of these type of amps or wants to upgrade, that might be a big thing. But I think in a lot of ways, that's way more about the individual and how they view the katana, whether as a practice amp or as the all-in-one thing. The all-in-one person obviously wanting all of the different variation knobs and wanting all of the different mid scoops that come with the contour button on the EQ. But even for me, someone who hasn't really been treating it as a practice amp, sometimes I just leave it on the vintage setting.
Yeah, and again, I'm still really wanting to know what kind of speakers are in there, not only in size, but what make, what brand. Are they 12s? And if so, are they V30s? I highly doubt it. But as well, too, I'm guessing there's some sort of software interface that allows you to more easily change your tones around, or is it just that? Apparently, I'm going to get schooled completely in the comments on this one for not knowing any of this, but hey, I the actual modeling amplifiers I know nothing about. I know quite a bit about the actual modelers, the pedal boards, the multi-effects all-in-one modelers, but the actual amps themselves, that's why I thought I'd, check this out. And yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he'll let us know a little bit. It seems like this is more of a video for somebody that's already had the previous version of the katanas and knows them well and is just showing the new features, because yeah, from what I'm seeing right now, it at least he's not featuring that part where it shows a software interface where you can change things around. It seems like just multiple switches for just different, you know, possible tone banks that way. But hey, the tones that he's getting is really cool, but like a lot of people are believing more and more these days, the tone is actually in the speaker. And he's miking up the amp. Even if there is some sort of line out, he's got a mic in front of the amp. What kind of speakers? That's what I still really want to know.
And then, like, every once in a while, I'd turn it to, like, the deep thing, and I'd just experiment. I'd be like, how does it actually sound? I'm like, oh, okay. Because a lot of the times you see a lot of different like practice amps and amps in these spheres doing these things, and you get worried that they're a placebo effect. Like something says vintage, it's like when a videographer says cinematic. But then you realize everything that Boss has to pack into these things to actually stay competitive with a market where a lot of people are saying you need a tube amp. You have to give these people everything you possibly can. But even in giving them all that, if you want to assume this idea that people are going to say they want their solid state amp to replace their tube amp, you have to think about it on the terms of the tube amp as well. And one of the big things that people say about the idea of a tube amp that they like, even if it's more simple than something like this, is the idea that it takes pedals really well, that it's a good pedal platform. And that's something a lot of the times I tend to neglect when it comes to the Katana or even any other solid state amp that I've seen over the years. But if these are the terms we're given, that doesn't make it any less important. I know the big part of the allure of something like a Katana is knowing that I can just go in Tone Studio, I can have all my pedals laid out the same way they're laid out here. But with solid state amps, like we said, if you want to be mentioned in the same league as the big dogs.
Okay, Tone Studio. I did see that. There is software that allows you to a lot more easily lay out your effects and all that. And I guess you get all the virtual effects in there and all that sort of thing. So there's that. I'm still curious about the speakers in those things.
We have to test you the same way we test the big dog. And that's where I really do think having something like a new amp in the push can really be a big thing for pedal platforms. One of the things that I'm realizing more and more is that pedal platforms doesn't necessarily always mean what gets the best clean tone. I forget a lot of the times that the point of a pedal platform isn't just to use your pedal to make your perfectly clean amp break up. It's the relationship between those two things and understanding which amp you're using, what sound you're trying to get. So depending on the sound that some people are trying to get, it could be better to use a plexi that's a little bit more crank than a perfectly clean amp and making your pedal do all the work. Just depends on what you need. And that's where I see something like this with having more amp options can better hold its own if someone would want it to be a pedal platform. Because I was originally doing with the SD1 where I had like the push tone. And even just learning how the different amps on Katana work, it gave me a lot of room to play with. So at the end of the day, why does any of this even matter? Well, I think because you're not going to get a lot of hardware updates on a lot of pieces of gear. If I were a betting man, I would be very willing to say we're probably not going to get Helix 2 tomorrow because of all the different software updates. So when these big digital amp companies come out with something that does require a hardware update, that does require something new, I think it's cool to just wait and see actually where they're going. And in terms of just like digital amps as a whole, when you start to notice those tonal improvements, or you start to notice the improvements in some of the intangibles as a whole, like the tone studio, you start to wonder where they're going to target next and how the current target audience might shift a little bit, and if something like a push amp could really win someone over. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know. Are you a Katana fan? Are you not a Katana fan? Do you think the updates to Gen 3 are blowing your mind, or do you think you'll stick with the Mark II? Please let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a long time coming and me wanting to check out the Katana again, especially in having the Artist Mark II head that just like sounds so much better than I remembered it did. And to see what they're doing with Gen 3, they seem to be making a statement right now. If you want to know anything about how to get one of the Gen 3 Katanas, the links are in the description. Thank you to Boss, the sponsor of this video. Make sure to check them out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the other gears like guitar, the mic that I used in this video. Make sure to check out those links. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most importantly, like most important of all, have a fantastic day.
Alrighty. That was reacting to Tube Amp Meet Your Challenger by Mike Cole. Again, everybody, if you've not already subscribed to Mike Cole, go to his channel and give him a sub. And also, I included the link for the original video in the description. Click on that and give the original video a like. And on this video, my video, leave a comment on what you'd like to see me react to next. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, click the notification bell, like, comment, and share. It doesn't cost a thing and would really help out the channel. Also, please subscribe to my other channel, GK Mac Music, for some live looping live streams with a side of jackassery, some original music, and some short content, also with a side of jackassery. If you'd like to help out the channel financially, you can buy some merch at the merch store, or you can become a channel member. As always, everyone, thanks so much for your continued support. Do what makes you happy.